We just got a major Jeremy Sochan update that affects the whole start of the season for the San Antonio Spurs, as the young star who's been out since Eurobasket with a calf injury just received an update, just gave an update that has Mitch Johnson, the Spurs, and us Spurs fans super pumped up. But we also got to dive into what one analyst recently said about De'Aaron Fox and the Victor Wembanyama combo, and it has Spurs fans kind of fired up once again. We're going to get into all that coming up on this episode of Spurs Digest. And you know what? We'll start there with the De'Aaron Fox stuff, because the Sochan stuff, it's very interesting, but we'll get to that in just a little bit. I want to start here with what Tim Legler had to say about De'Aaron Fox. So they did a great video about a bunch of teams, some Rocket stuff, but look, we're only focused on the San Antonio Spurs and the impact of that. So let's dive into exactly what Tim Legler had to say here. So he said, De'Aaron Fox as a ball screen operator with Victor Wembanyama. I don't think De'Aaron Fox is a natural creator for other people. He's a scorer. I'm not thinking this is a guy that's going to be a perfect mesh with Victor Wembanyama. And look, this is a narrative we have been hearing ever since we traded for him, really, but especially since we signed that big extension. Look, we obviously know what he's capable of when healthy, and 23.5 points per game, 5 rebounds, 6.5 assists. The dude's going to fit no matter what. But let me just maybe even play devil's advocate for a second here. This might sound crazy. I don't think he's that wrong. Like, in a vacuum here, Fox is not a natural creator for other people in the role that he's going to be playing as like a ball screen operator with Victor Wembanyama. We've seen the stats before about how Victor Wembanyama operates best with a true playmaker in that pick and roll. Chris Paul, far and away the most points per possession in the pick and roll in his career with Wembanyama, which makes a lot of sense, the guy who is a natural playmaker. However, when you look at the way that these two guys are going to work together, I think De'Aaron Fox is going to have a very different role this season than I think people are anticipating. Yes, the pick and roll is never going to die. It's always a staple of NBA offenses. But with a guy like Wemby, who can space the floor even more and is probably the best lob target that De'Aaron Fox has had in his entire career, I genuinely think that's going to entirely change the dynamic of the Spurs offense. Not to mention some of the other interesting guys that he has on the team, like a great spot-up shooter. Hey, he knows Harrison Barnes very well, obviously. Even Luke Cornett, who, as we discussed in a previous video, had one of the best off-ball cutting values of any big man in the entire NBA. So while, yes, I don't think Fox is necessarily a natural playmaker for that, I think that the options that are going to present themselves for the Spurs offense this year is actually going to contribute very well to what De'Aaron Fox is able to bring with that slashing presence. But I also don't want to crap too much on what Tim Legler said, because he was very positive about the Spurs. This wasn't that I don't think they're really going to work well. He's like, I'm curious to see how they navigate it. And I thought this quote at the end, just something I wanted to share as well. He said, are the Spurs, because of Wembanyama's unique skill set and impact on the game, are they going to be more relevant quickly in the West, and they grab our attention in that first month of the season? That's what I'm excited about, because again, you look at this roster, and all you can say is like, look, those paper models, yeah, you can quantify De'Aaron Fox, but what you can't quantify is the leap that a lot of these young guys are going to take. How do you quantify what Dylan Harper's going to bring? How Stephon Castle improves from year 1 to year 2? How Devin Vassell, coming fully healthy, is going to work as a third option, which has really not even a fourth option at times, I imagine, which is not something he's been used to that much throughout his career with the Spurs. And how is Wemby going to completely change the outlook of this offense? So there's a lot of questions, but I think the Spurs are very well positioned to push past this narrative that Fox and Wemby are not going to work well together. Leave me your thoughts down below, because look, Wemby the alien, which side? This guy, oh, he's about to prove, I don't even know, I don't want to say prove people wrong. They all think he's going to do great. But I think the meshing with other players, I think that's where he's going to show that this offense is not like any other offense in the league. But you know what? It's time to get into the big thing here now, and that's Jeremy Sochan. Because Jeremy Sochan, he has been a big topic of conversation, and we're going to, well, actually, we'll show his stats first. Look, we know this dude is due for an extension. He's still under contract this year. Yes, that is very true. But a lot of times you want to extend these guys, before you get to the end of the season. You don't want to get right up to the end where he's a restricted free agent. You want to get him locked up. The problem is he had a calf injury that caused him to miss Eurobasket, right? We all know we were hyped to watch him play with Team Poland. Their first game of the tournament was supposed to be against Luka. Well, it was against Luka, but Jeremy Sochan didn't play. But Sochan, the calf injury, it was pretty devastating, because we know as basketball fans, calf injuries, as we've seen a lot this season for some reason in particular, they lead to some worse things, a lot of Achilles stuff. Anyway, we wanted to take our time with Jeremy Sochan, and the timeline was kind of expected. He should be good for start of training camp, but we finally got the big news here from Polish Twitter. Mateusz Babiarz said Jeremy Sochan is expected to be fully fit for the start of the San Antonio Spurs training camp. A huge update, something we've been waiting a lot for, and again, like, this changes kind of how the start of the season looks for the Spurs, and I still think Jeremy Sochan has a shot to be a starter this year. We'll see how his shooting comes along. I do think Harrison Barnes will probably start. We talk about this all the time. You all know I'm a Jeremy Sochan truther. I'm not ashamed of it, and I don't think I should be. However, Harrison Barnes is a better fit, I think, in the starting lineup right now. But Sochan, again, like with this extension talk, this injury, the Spurs are going to want to see a bit more from him, and I think he's going to want to go out there and prove, look, this is a contract year, man. I want my bag, right? He's got a lot to prove this year. And so to hear him say that, you know, step by step, it's getting better and better, it's a process, he's working hard in San Antonio, thinks he'll be 100% ready for the start of camp, he's really missed basketball, that's about as good of an update as we could get, because Jeremy Sochan was such a key player last year, and again, we've talked about this before, like when you look at his stats early in the season and then late in the season, once he kind of recovered from the back injury that he had partway through the year, those samples where he was kind of fully healthy and rolling in the season after getting some reps, those were when he was playing his best basketball. Yes, you could say that for any player, absolutely. But the thing is, Jeremy Sochan was bringing so much to the table, especially with his rebounding, but his defense, man. We all know this dude has all defense upside, right? His shooting even got better in certain stretches, and there were points where he was averaging 16, 17, 18 points a game in certain stretches, and he worked very well as a slasher alongside Victor Wembanyama and how the Spurs were rolling that season. Now, again, with De'Aaron Fox kind of, you know, I say clogging the lane a little more, it might be harder for Sochan to get those cutting looks. Again, like with Cornette being a guy who's going to cut, Wemby's going to do Wemby things. It might be harder, which is the nature of the offense, but if his spot-up shooting can improve, and if he can just find ways to contribute, especially on the defensive end, and just for that energy and intensity, that's really what you want from Jeremy Sochan. And again, coming off a calf injury, you never, ever want to rush it. But to hear that he's good, should be ready for training camp is phenomenal news to Spurs fans, because like I've said, like, we know what this team is capable of, and the one thing we would love to have heading into the season, especially after Wemby's blood clots, after Devin Vassell's foot injury, after De'Aaron Fox's pinky surgery, after Jeremy Sochan's calf injury, after Dylan Harper's surgery on his thumb, I think his hand, whatever, his surgery now before the season, that's 5 big name players that are, you know, there were questions about their health heading into this season. And while Harper is still maybe a little more uncertain right now, the best thing as Spurs fans that we could get is to get more guys healthier, right? And De'Aaron Fox already seems great. No splint on the pinky. He's good to go. And again, I think his shooting numbers are going to go up because of that. Vassell, full off season of training. That foot injury seems to be by the wayside, hoping for it. Wemby, we know he's at 100%. So for all the good news that we've gotten on those guys this offseason, add one to it with Jeremy Sochan. I'm very excited about it. I want to hear what you guys have to say about Sochan and all this stuff we discussed down below, because that'll do it for this episode of Spurs Digest. And if you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. So close to 10,000. Season's right around the corner. Oh, can't wait to be along for the ride with you guys. I've been your host, Josh Gosse, and I'll catch y'all in the next one.